Hey everybody, welcome to Slash Bash, where today I am bringing you another Choosing Beggar Reddit video. If you are new to the channel, then subscribe and click on notifications so you don't miss out on the fun. In our first story, a Choosing Beggar's sister-in-law calls to talk our OP into leaving all her money to her children. Not a creepy call to get at all. Let's jump right in. My step-sister-in-law is the kind of person who couldn't fathom why any woman would not want to become a mother. She's always been really critical of my choice to be child-free. She always made some catty comments about how I'll never know true happiness. However, when I saw her a few days ago at my dad's birthday party, she seemed to have done a complete 180. She told me again and again how she's supportive of my life choices and how I shouldn't have kids if I don't want them. I didn't know what to make of this. I just said something like, "Oh, okay, thanks." But my gut told me that there was more to her sudden acceptance than she was letting on. The phone call I received from her yesterday proved my gut instincts right. She started off with the usual, "How are you? We need to get together soon" bull stuff. Then she began to not so subtly inquire about my finances. What sort of savings do I have? How much I make every year, etc. I of course got irritated and asked her what she meant and to come to the flipping point. She giggled and replied, "Well, since you won't be having kids of your own, why don't you make my children your heirs?" I didn't know whether to laugh like a maniacal villain or just get pissed. I decided to let her go on. "As you know, your brother and I are planning to have at least 4 kids. They already have one. So when they're born, you can leave equal portions of your estate to all of them." "Uh-huh. You and that boyfriend of yours say you don't even want to get married. So it's not like you have to leave anything for him, right?" "Really? Yeah. So I thought instead of your life savings going to waste, they can just go to your family." "After I'm dead?" "Yes. Do you plan to make it look like a suicide or an accident?" What? Since you've planned all of this, you must have made some plans to off me, right? Go on. Tell me what it is. Is it something super creative and unusual?" My sister-in-law got angry in the way that douchebags get when you call them out on their BS. "How could you think that? I only suggested this so you wouldn't have the burden of worrying about what would happen to your money when you're on your deathbed." "Aren't you a sweetheart? I'll spare you the burden of worrying about me worrying about my money by leaving everything I have to charities that I support." She started blabbering again, but before she could form a full sentence, I hung up. I also called my dad to let him know all about this. This morning, I received a call from my stepbrother, and he apologized profusely for what his wife had said. I told him if she ever pulled anything like this again, it will be the last time I speak to them. My guess is that the sister-in-law's next step will be taking out the old insurance policy on her. I wonder if you can even check for that. Story 2 shows us a choosing beggar who wants some 3D printing done, but he doesn't think the offer is fair. You can't justify that much. "Hey man, love the record crate you posted. Would you be able to print me one?" "Hi, thanks. I'm not sure. They take a while to print and are pretty big, so it may be a bit too difficult to ship." "I can pay for shipping. Give me your PayPal and I'll send you $5 to cover it. I really want one. I think it's awesome." "Thanks, but I'm in the UK, so shipping it to you would probably cost at least $20, especially considering the size. I don't think it's feasible, sorry." "Darn, man, fine. I really want one, so I'll pay $20. Send me your PayPal." $20 is just what it'd cost to ship it. There's other costs involved too. Tell you what, call it $50 all in and I'll make you one since you like it so much." "What the flip, man? I looked online to see how much that printer plastic costs, and it's like $15 for a huge amount. You could probably make 50 crates for that. Don't try and scam me." "I'm not. There's other costs involved than just the plastic. I thought $50 was a fair deal, especially considering I wasn't even selling anything and you approached me to request something." Whatever, butthead. There's no way you can justify $50 when you've already said the shipping was $20 and the plastic is dirt cheap. You're right. I think I made a calculation error. Bear with me a sec and I'll give you a more accurate price. I'm guessing you don't have any of this stuff already and would have to buy it all in order to make one yourself, so I factored that into the costs. Also, it seems shipping was a little cheaper than I expected, so apologies for that. I've included the cheaper cost in the revised calculation below. 1 kilogram printer PLA, 18 pounds. Shipping, 10 pounds. Shipping materials, £2.50. Sandpaper of various grits, 6 pounds. Primer, 8 pounds a can. Lacquer, 8 pounds a can. Acrylic paint, 3 colors, 3 pounds a tube times 3. Acrylic paint thinner, 6 pounds a bottle. Airbrush, 25 pounds. Airbrush compressor, 60 pounds. 3D printer, 160 pounds. 18 hours print time at 8 pounds an hour is 144 pounds. Since I will regularly have to check in on it, and it will also take up to 18 hours of printer time that could be used for other projects. 6 hours spent designing the 3D model at $12 an hour is 72 pounds. My 15 years of design experience that allowed me to think up the idea and make it a reality, 300 pounds. Petrol cost to go to the post office, 2 pounds. An hour out of my day to go to the post office, 10 pounds. Electricity to run a printer for 18 hours, probably not much, so this one's on the house because I'm feeling generous. That makes a total of 840 pounds 50, but let's just call it an even 840 pounds. My PayPal is blank. I'll get it sent out within a couple of days of you sending the payment. Thanks so much for being supportive. It's always great to hear that people like the things you've created. And that's how you get to negotiate when you didn't want to make something for anybody anyway. Story 3 shows us a choosing beggar grandmother and aunt who are terrorizing a poor family. I'm back with another story about my aunt and her shameless entitlement. The events of this story occurred in 1982, a year before I was born. My dad told me all about it some time ago. My parents had recently gotten married. My cousin, who's my aunt's son, was 6 at the time, and my uncle had recently lost his job. My grandmother insisted that my dad support his sister in her time of need. This meant letting my aunt and cousin move in until my uncle could find a job. Uncle too, of course, would be welcome whenever he decided to show up. My parents' house had only 2 bedrooms. One was occupied by Grand Monster, the other by my parents. Here in India, it is customary for elderly parents to live with their adult sons. She insisted that my parents give up their bedroom to aunt and cousin because she couldn't imagine her little girl having to sleep in the living room. My dad didn't want to upset his mother, and he agreed. My aunt and cousin stayed for over a month, and my uncle too would come over on the weekends. Grand Monster insisted that my mother cook for them whenever they demanded, so my mom would come home from work and would cook 3 different meals, one in accordance with my cousin, one according to my aunt's preference, and a third for herself, my dad, and Grand Monster. On weekends when my uncle came over, his preference would have to be catered to as well. But were they ever grateful? Heck no! They felt perfectly entitled to boss my mum around and find faults in her efforts to make them comfortable. Nothing she ever did for them was good enough. Aunt and Grand Monster would constantly criticize her cooking and housekeeping skills. When my dad did his share of housework, they'd mock him for being henpecked. Almost every other day, my aunt would invite her friends over and they'd stay for hours, and my mum would have to cook refreshments for them as well. Anytime my mom wanted to invite her friends over, my Grand Monster would put on a scowl that could suck the soul off of a dementor. But Aunt's friends were welcome, of course. The one time my dad put his foot down was when Aunt wanted to invite a friend of hers to stay for the weekend. Interestingly, my uncle's sister, Aunt's sister-in-law, found Aunt and Uncle's behavior to be quite inappropriate. She visited once and clearly didn't like the way my mother was being treated. She was a strong, no-nonsense kind of woman and called out my aunt for not being grateful for the way my mom and dad were putting up with her and told her she should stop being a burden and should help out with the housework. My dad tells me that the concern an outsider had shown for her well-being that should have been expected from family members brought tears to my mom's eyes. My aunt cried over this too, but for entirely different reasons. She bitched to my grandmonster that my parents had made her look bad in front of her husband's sister. My grandmonster reprimanded my parents for making her cry, and my mum ended up apologizing to my aunt just to keep the peace. It turns my stomach when I think about this. Finally, my uncle found a new source of income, and aunt and cousin moved back in with him. But not before they took my parents' TV with them. Back then, televisions were a novelty for middle-class households in India. My aunt and uncle didn't have one. My mom and dad had just bought theirs. My grandmonster made my parents give up their television to my aunt because they'd been through such a tough time, and they'd give it back once they could afford to buy their own. Needless to say, the TV was never returned. With the mother cooking different meals for various tastes, if I was one of the people that was being very mean to her in this situation, I would wait and watch very carefully before I took a bite of my food. Story 4 asks the age-old question, am I the butthole for not feeding my ungrateful neighbors? When my husband, 30-year-old female, and I got our first house, I became friendly with our neighbor, who had 2 young children, 2 and 3. They're now 7 and 8. Early on, I noticed she was stressed. She was working from early to late. I had noticed she was getting home at like 10 or 11 p.m. I started to accidentally cook extra. I'd bring over shepherd pies, meat pies, fish pie, etc. I'd accidentally have too many steaks or food that was about to go off, and this led to the children just having dinner at ours. We recently discovered our daughter, 3-year-old female, has a meat allergy, so everything has been swapped to a veggie option. Me and my partner have decided it will make life a whole lot easier to make the switch with her. To put it bluntly, I'm not cooking 2 meals. We usually avoid soya and just do vegetables, vegetable lasagna, mushroom burgers, etc., broccoli and kale, mac and cheese. Well, neighbor decided to complain that I was trying to convert her children who now refuse to eat food she cooks. So I've stopped cooking for her. She apologized and has asked me to cook, but she's never appreciated what I've done for her, and complaining has just pushed it over the edge. My husband thinks I'm being a butthole and that she was just being a concerned parent and clearly feels bad about accepting my charity. Well, I have pretty clear feelings about this one, but I'll leave it to you guys to let me know what you think in the comments. This has been John from /bash. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video and want to see more of them, then please hit that subscribe button. We'd love for you to drop a like and share it with your friends, and we will see you in the next one.